you ever noticed how your furry friend suddenly transforms into an enthusiastic gardener, carefully burying a piece of their favorite treat in a flower bed? Or even more amusingly, how they try to bury their food bowl on the smooth kitchen floor, diligently mimicking digging movements with their paws as if scooping invisible earth. This picture is both endearing and puzzling. Today, we embark on a fascinating journey, following the ancient instincts of our four-legged companions to understand why dogs so persistently bury their treasures and what to do if such behavior becomes problematic. It all begins with origins. Many thousands of years ago, when the ancestors of our domestic dogs lived in the wild, survival depended on the ability to adapt to unpredictable conditions. Wolves and other wild canids hunted not according to a schedule, but when the opportunity presented itself. Sometimes the prey was so large that even an entire pack couldn't eat it in one sitting. At such moments, natural wisdom suggested, save what you cannot eat now, because tomorrow's hunt might be unsuccessful. Archaeological research shows that even the most ancient canids, living 50 million years ago, demonstrated signs of hoarding behavior. Fossil remains indicate that some species created special caches with bones and other parts of prey. This behavior was so crucial for survival that nature secured it at the genetic level. Soil is the perfect natural preservative. When a wild dog buried a piece of meat, the cool earth slowed the decomposition process and, equally importantly, masked the scent from other hungry predators and scavengers. Studies have shown that soil temperature at a depth of 15 to 20 centimeters remains relatively stable even with significant air temperature fluctuations, creating the effect of a primitive refrigerator. Most interestingly, wild canids demonstrate remarkable memory for the location of their caches. Ethologists studying wolves in their natural habitat have noted cases where animals returned to their pantries weeks and even months later, unerringly finding them under snow or fallen leaves. Incredibly, a wolf's sense of smell is so sensitive that it can detect a buried bone at depth of up to 30 centimeters. When we observe our domestic dog enthusiastically burying a bone in the garden or hiding a toy under a pillow, we witness an ancient ritual that originated long before domestication. It's a sort of time capsule connecting our indoor pet with its wild ancestors. Caching, as this behavior is scientifically called, manifests differently in various canid species. For example, red foxes are known for their ability to create genuine food storages where dozens of kilograms of food can be kept. They don't just bury their prey, but create a complex system of trails leading to their caches, often confusing their tracks to throw potential thieves off the scent. Arctic foxes, living in the harsh conditions of the Arctic, are forced to store food in huge quantities. During summer months, when prey is abundant, they create dozens or even hundreds of caches, evenly distributed throughout their territory. This strategic planning helps them survive the long winter months, when hunting becomes almost impossible. Coyotes, the closest relatives of domestic dogs, show particular selectivity when choosing caching spots. They prefer to bury food in open areas where the soil is easily workable, but choose places with noticeable landmarks, unusual rocks, solitary trees, or bushes that help them subsequently find their supplies. Our domestic pets have inherited these complex behavioral patterns and adapted them to life alongside humans. That's why we can observe a dog burying items in the most unexpected places, under a blanket, in a laundry basket, or even just mimicking the burying process with their nose, pushing imaginary earth toward a valuable object. Surprisingly, ethologists have identified an interesting feature. Domestic dogs more frequently bury objects when they feel they're being watched. In an experiment conducted at the University of Vienna, dogs were offered to hide treats in two situations, when the owner was watching them and when the owner was distracted. Results showed that pets exhibited much greater secrecy when they knew they were being observed. Some even arranged false caches, pretending to bury treats in one place, then secretly re-hiding them elsewhere when the observer's attention weakened. But modern dogs don't bury things solely because of an ancient hoarding instinct. There's a whole spectrum of additional reasons why our pets so enthusiastically engage in this activity. Resource excess is one of the most common reasons. Unlike their wild ancestors, domestic dogs live in conditions of abundance. They receive food regularly, in sufficient quantities, and often much more than they can eat in one sitting. Studies show that modern domestic dogs in developed countries consume on average 30% more calories than required to maintain optimal weight. Not surprisingly, Instinct tells them to save the excess for a rainy day. Paradoxically, the more food a dog receives, the stronger the desire to hide it may become. An experiment conducted at the University of California showed that dogs receiving food irregularly but in large quantities buried it more often than those receiving small portions strictly on schedule. This suggests that feeding predictability plays an equally important role as food quantity. Possessive instinct is another powerful factor. In multi-dog households, competition for resources creates the need to protect one's own. Even the friendliest dogs may show territoriality when it comes to food or favorite toys. Studies show that in homes with several dogs, the frequency of food burial is almost twice as high as where a pet lives alone. An interesting observation. Some dogs bury items not so much for themselves as to prevent others from getting them. This phenomenon, known as protective caching, is especially pronounced in dogs that have previously experienced periods of resource scarcity. For example, former homeless animals or puppies from large litters where competition for mother's milk was high. Anxiety and stress can significantly intensify hoarding behavior. In situations of uncertainty, when a dog feels a threat to their normal way of life, creating caches becomes a way to gain control over at least part of their world. Studies show that dogs suffering from separation anxiety show a 60 to 70% increase in burial frequency during the first days after their owner leaves for vacation or a business trip. Veterinary behavioral specialists note that burying can be one manifestation of compulsive disorder in dogs. In such cases, the pet may persistently bury and dig up the same object repeatedly without apparent practical purpose. This becomes a kind of ritual helping to reduce internal tension. Statistics show that about 5% of dogs suffer from some form of compulsive behavior, and burying is one of its most common manifestations. Boredom and lack of stimulation is another common cause. Dogs are highly intelligent creatures that need constant mental and physical engagement. When energy finds no constructive outlet, it transforms into what we often call problem behavior. Studies show that dogs receiving less than 1 hour of active walks per day are 3 times more likely to exhibit destructive behavior, including obsessive digging and burying. One surprising fact: burying can be a sort of game for a dog. Observations show that some pets genuinely enjoy the process of creating a cache. Regardless of the value of the buried item, they can enthusiastically hide both an expensive beef bone and an ordinary stick or tennis ball with equal enthusiasm. Ethologists believe that in such cases, the ritual itself is important, not the result. Breed predispositions to burying are particularly interesting to study. It turns out some breeds demonstrate this behavior significantly more often than others, and not always because of a hoarding instinct. For example, dachshunds were originally bred to hunt badgers and other burrowing animals. Their short legs and elongated body were ideally suited for penetrating the underground shelters of prey. Not surprisingly, modern dachshunds have maintained a passion for digging. It's part of their hunting instinct. Terriers are another group of breeds known for their love of earthworks. The very name of this group comes from the Latin word terra, earth, which says a lot. Jack Russell Terriers, Fox Terriers, Welsh Terriers, and many other representatives of this group were originally bred to hunt foxes, rabbits, and other animals hiding in burrows. Geneticists have discovered that these dogs have specific genetic markers associated with an increased tendency to dig. Surprisingly, some northern breeds such as huskies and malamutes also frequently bury food, although their ancestors were not burrowing hunters. This is explained by the climate characteristics in which these breeds were formed. In Arctic conditions, burying prey in snow or frozen ground was an effective way to preserve meat from rotting during rare warm months and protect it from other predators. Let's examine in more detail how to distinguish normal, instinctive behavior from problematic behavior requiring correction. Occasional burying of individual items is completely natural behavior that should not cause concern. Most dogs occasionally hide especially valuable things, and this is a normal part of their behavioral repertoire. However, there are signs indicating that the situation may require attention. If a dog systematically refuses food, preferring to bury it, this may indicate several problems. Perhaps the pet is receiving too much food, and its body naturally regulates consumption. Studies show that up to 40% of domestic dogs in developed countries are overweight, and this is often related to owners overestimating their pets' caloric needs. Another possible reason: the food doesn't suit the dog's taste preferences or causes discomfort. Some pets may have intolerance to certain ingredients, and refusing food becomes their way of avoiding unpleasant sensations. Veterinary nutritionists note that up to 15% of dogs have some food sensitivities, which can manifest not only in obvious symptoms like digestive disorders, but also in more subtle signals, including unwillingness to eat. Particular alertness should be triggered by a sudden refusal of food in a dog that previously ate with appetite. This could be a symptom of various severity illnesses, from banal tooth pain to serious problems with internal organs. Statistics show that changes in feeding behavior are one of the first noticeable signs of ill health in dogs in approximately 70% of cases. Obsessive, repetitive burying, especially if accompanied by other signs of anxiety, restlessness, panting, increased salivation, may indicate obsessive-compulsive disorder, OCD. This condition requires professional help as it rarely resolves on its own and tends to progress. Studies by veterinary behavioral specialists show that OCD in dogs responds to treatment in 85% of cases with a combination of behavioral therapy and, if necessary, medication. Interestingly, burying can sometimes be a sign of dominant behavior. Some dogs demonstrate control over territory and resources this way. If a pet actively buries objects and also shows other signs of dominance, for example, growls when someone approaches their caches, this may indicate the need to work on general behavioral problems. Now let's move to practical recommendations for correcting excessive burying. There's a whole arsenal of effective strategies to help channel your pet's instincts in a constructive direction. The first thing to pay attention to is the feeding regimen. Veterinary nutritionists recommend feeding adult dogs twice a day with fixed portions calculated according to the pet's weight, age, and activity level. Studies show that dogs eating on a regular schedule bury food significantly less often than those receiving food irregularly or having constant access to food. An experiment conducted at the Canadian Centre for Animal Behaviour Research showed that introducing a by-the-clock feeding regimen reduced the frequency of food burying by 60% in a group of dogs that previously exhibited this behavior regularly. Scientists explain this effect by forming a sense of predictability and security in dogs. They know that food will come regularly, and there's no need to create reserves. The quality and appropriate type of food is another key factor. Some dogs may bury food simply because they don't like it or it causes discomfort. Veterinary specialists recommend determining through gradual experiments which type of nutrition best suits your pet: dry food, wet food, natural feeding, or their combination. An interesting observation. Some dogs prefer different types of food at different times of day. For example, they might more readily eat dry food in the morning and wet food in the evening. Adapting to these preferences can significantly reduce the likelihood of burying. Limited food access time is a simple but effective technique. Specialists recommend leaving the food bowl available for 15 to 20 minutes, after which it should be removed regardless of whether the dog ate everything or not. This method is effective for several reasons. First, it mimics the natural situation in the wild. There too, food is available for a limited time, and if you don't take advantage of the moment, it will go to others. Second, it creates a clear structure that helps the dog adapt to the feeding regimen in the house. A study conducted at the University of Melbourne showed that introducing time frames for eating reduces the likelihood of food burying almost twofold. This method is especially effective for dogs prone to food selectivity. Physical and mental stimulation is fundamentally important for preventing any behavioral problems, including excessive burying. Specialists recommend providing dogs with at least 2 hours of activity per day, divided into several sessions. It's important to combine physical exercise with mental stimulation. Amazing data was obtained during a study conducted at the University of Edinburgh. 15 minutes of active intellectual games tire a dog as much as 45 minutes of simple physical activity. This is explained by the fact that mental work requires significant energy expenditure. Dog puzzles, clicker training, games searching for hidden objects. All these are excellent ways to release the pet's natural need for mental stimulation. Interactive toys and puzzle feeders are particularly valuable for dogs prone to burying. They allow the pet to work for food, which corresponds to their natural instincts. In the wild, dogs and their ancestors spent up to 6 hours a day searching for and obtaining food. Modern domestic pets receive food on a platter, creating energy surplus that can spill over into unwanted behavior. The market offers a huge variety of such toys, from simple balls with holes for treats to complex puzzles requiring several sequential actions to obtain a reward. Studies show that regular use of such devices reduces the likelihood of developing destructive behavior, including obsessive burying, by 60 to 70%. For dogs with a particularly pronounced passion for digging, creating a special zone can be the perfect solution. Designate a corner in the garden or create a sandbox, a place where the pet will be allowed to dig and bury toys without restrictions. Make this place attractive. Bury several toys there for the dog to find. Use loose, pleasant-to-dig soil. Experts recommend marking this zone with a special scent or visual signal that the dog will associate with permission to dig. This could be a special spray with an attractive smell for dogs or a special toy that you only take out when visiting this zone. Over time, the pet will learn to understand where they can satisfy their digging instinct and where not. Replacement training is a powerful behavioral correction tool. This method is based on the principle that it's easier to teach a dog to do something new than to unlearn something they're already doing. When you notice that the pet is about to bury food, offer an alternative, more acceptable behavior and generously reward them for it. For example, you can teach the dog to take the bowl to a certain place or give a signal when they're full, approaching the owner or ringing a special bell. An experiment conducted at Berkeley University showed that dogs trained to report their satiation were 80% less likely to try to bury food leftovers. It's fundamentally important to remember that punishment for burying is not only ineffective, but potentially harmful. Behaviorists emphasize that a dog cannot connect the owner's negative reaction with the internal impulse that makes them bury objects. Instead, the pet may begin to fear the person or will simply bury things secretly when the owner isn't watching. A study conducted at the University of Tübingen showed that dogs punished for burying not only didn't stop doing it, but demonstrated increased anxiety and other behavioral problems. 80% of such pets began hiding food in more concealed places, only exacerbating the problem. Incredibly, a dog's tendency to bury can be directed to useful purposes. Many working dogs successfully use this instinct for practical purposes. For example, truffle hunting dogs are trained to find these expensive mushrooms growing underground, thanks to their refined sense of smell and natural tendency to dig. The price of a well-trained truffle dog can reach several thousand euros, and some particularly talented pets help their owners find truffles worth up to several hundred euros per season. Archaeological dogs are another amazing application of our pets' natural skills. In Great Britain and Sweden, specially trained dogs help archaeologists find ancient burials and artifacts. Their sensitive nose can detect microscopic changes in soil composition indicating the presence of organic remains or metal objects. Such dogs literally read history through layers of earth. Regarding already buried items, many owners wonder, should they retrieve them? Expert opinions are divided here, but most lean toward a compromise strategy. If we're talking about food products, especially meat, fish, or other perishable products, they should be removed to prevent the risk of food poisoning if the dog decides to dig them up and eat them later. Microbiological studies show that meat buried in the ground begins to be actively colonized by bacteria after just 2 to 3 hours, and after a day, the concentration of potentially dangerous microorganisms can reach critical values. The risk of developing clostridial infections, including botulism, which can be deadly for dogs, is especially high. However, if we're talking about safe items, rubber toys, special chewing bones made of durable materials, they can be left. Moreover, a dog's periodic discovery of their old caches can become an exciting game and additional stimulation for them. Interestingly, some dogs create real collections of buried objects, periodically checking their safety. Researchers from Cambridge University observed a Labrador that systematically buried toys in the garden and inspected them every few days, moving them from one cache to another. Scientists compared this behavior to how some birds regularly check their food supplies, protecting them from competitors. If a dog hides food in the house, behind the sofa, under pillows, or carpets, the recommendations are unambiguous. Such caches should be carefully eliminated. Besides the obvious problems with hygiene and unpleasant odors, this can attract insects and rodents. Additionally, the dog might forget about the hidden food and it will decompose, creating a health risk for all home inhabitants. Specialists recommend removing such household caches imperceptibly to the pet to avoid causing additional stress. If the dog sees you retrieving an item they've hidden, they may perceive this as theft, and next time will seek even more inaccessible places for their treasures. Behavioral experts advise, if you discover that your dog is burying or hiding food in the house, don't make an issue of it. Instead of scolding the pet or expressing dissatisfaction, simply distract them with something interesting and then inconspicuously remove the cache. Studies show that the owner's emotional reaction can reinforce unwanted behavior by drawing additional attention to it. Special attention should be paid to puppies. Behavioral patterns that may persist throughout life form at an early age. If a small pet begins actively burying food, it's important to gently correct this behavior through proper organization of feeding regimen and positive reinforcement of desirable actions. Veterinary specialists note that puppies between 3 and 6 months of age experience a peak in activity, exploring various behavioral strategies. This is the ideal time for forming correct habits. Studies show that behavioral patterns established during this period persist with a probability of up to 85% in adulthood. An interesting fact, puppies often copy the behavior of older dogs in the family. If there's an adult dog in the house prone to burying, the likelihood that a puppy will adopt this habit increases approximately threefold. This phenomenon, known as social learning, is widespread among highly developed social species, which undoubtedly includes dogs. In some cases, specialist help may be required. If a dog shows signs of severe anxiety during burying, for example, is excessively excited, constantly licking their lips, frequently yawning, or breathing heavily, this may indicate a more serious behavioral problem. In such situations, consultation with a veterinary behaviorist may be necessary to develop an individual correction plan. Statistics show that about 15% of behavioral problems in dogs are associated with anxiety disorders of varying severity. In some cases, simple correction of maintenance regime and training may not be sufficient, and a comprehensive approach, including behavioral therapy and possibly temporary medication support, will be required. When working to change a dog's habit of burying food, it's extremely important to maintain patience and understanding. Remember that behind this behavior stand thousands of years of evolution. Dogs were burying valuable resources long before they became our companions, and this strategy was key to the species' survival. Geneticists have discovered that the tendency toward hoarding behavior is fixed at the DNA level. Dogs have specific genetic markers associated with this instinct, and although their expression may vary depending on breed and individual characteristics, it's impossible to completely turn off this ancient mechanism. However, with a consistent and positive approach, this behavior can be significantly modified and directed into an acceptable channel. Studies show that even dogs with a strongly expressed burying instinct can be trained in 80 to 90% of cases if correction methods are applied regularly and consistently. Special attention should be paid to the phenomenon of burying food observed in dogs kept in apartments without access to open ground. Unable to realize their instinct in the traditional way, such pets show remarkable ingenuity. They may bury objects in sofa cushions, under blankets, in a laundry basket, or even imitate the burying process on a smooth floor. Animal behavior psychologists call this displaced activity. When instinctive behavior cannot be realized in its natural form, it transforms and finds an outlet in a modified form. This phenomenon is observed in many animal species in captivity and testifies to the plasticity of their behavioral reactions. For urban dogs deprived of the opportunity to dig in natural ground, specialists recommend creating special sandboxes or using large containers with filler where the pet can safely realize their instincts. Studies show that access to such alternative digging places reduces the likelihood of destructive behavior in the home by 75%. The choice of suitable substrate for such a sandbox matters. Some dogs prefer sand, others fine wood chips or special filler made from corn cobs. Experts recommend experimenting with different materials to determine which is most attractive to your pet. In conclusion, I'd like to emphasize that the habit of dogs burying food and valuable items is not just an amusing feature or annoying problem. It's a window into the amazing world of canine psychology, an opportunity to peek into the depths of the evolutionary history of our four-legged companions. Each time we observe our domestic pet carefully burying their treasure, we witness behavior that has formed over millions of years and helped dog ancestors survive in an unpredictable and often harsh world. Modern research is delving deeper into the mysteries of canine thinking. Recent experiments using functional magnetic resonance imaging fMRI, have shown that when a dog buries a valuable object, the same areas are activated in its brain as in humans when depositing money into a savings account. This remarkable similarity of neural mechanisms speaks to the deep evolutionary connection of basic survival strategies across different species. By observing our pet and trying to understand the motives for their actions, we're not only solving practical issues, but also expanding the boundaries of interspecies understanding. We're learning to see the world through the eyes of a creature whose perception is in many ways different from ours, yet at the same time has much in common with it. In this process of mutual discovery, the deep respect and sincere attachment are born that make the union of human and dog one of the most successful and enduring interspecies partnerships in history. Dogs enrich our lives not only with their loyalty and love, but also with the opportunity to touch something deeply natural and ancient in our technological world. Observing our domestic pet enthusiastically burying a bone in the garden, we are momentarily transported to those distant times when dog ancestors roamed the expanses of prehistoric landscapes and human ancestors were just beginning their path to civilization. And at this moment, we understand that despite all the differences, we are united by something fundamental: the desire for security, care for the future, the desire to preserve what is valuable. Ultimately, a dog burying a bone and a human saving money for a rainy day are guided by the same ancient instinct, the desire to secure resources in an unpredictable world. Thank you for your attention. We hope this video has helped you better understand your four-legged friend and their sometimes puzzling behavior. If you enjoyed this material, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel for new fascinating stories from the world of pets. Take care of your four-legged friends, respect their nature, and enjoy every moment of your amazing interspecies communication. And if you have your own stories about how your dog shows ingenuity in burying valuable things, be sure to share them in the comments. Your experience may be useful to other owners facing a similar situation. Until we meet again in upcoming episodes.